I watched Jarrett Hurd the other week lose against Luis Arias, and this is why I don't call time on weight bullying. I never have. I don't know if anyone's noticed. I don't get into all that weight bullying. But when people were saying that Jarrett Hurd was only winning these fights because of weight bullying, I said, no, he's winning them fights because he knows how to use his size at 154. There's no weight bullying here. Now, if he was fighting before the aborted Spinks Eddie Mustafa Muhammad rematch in 1983, then we'd have to change his circumstances. Because a guy that size, same day weigh-in, making 154, probably wouldn't get away with it. But you can only deal with the cards you're dealt with. He didn't box then. He boxes now. His era is now. So with 24 hours or whatever it is to rehydrate, he's good. He's good. He can use that as part of his strategy. And it's fair game. That's just fair game. He's using the regulations, the rules, and the science of rehydrating within that time period because the era he's boxing in allows that. It is what it is. But I don't know if he got bored of fighting in that weight class or getting that hulking frame into that weight class was becoming increasingly difficult. So he's had to move up to 160. And that 6 pounds is crucial. Very crucial, especially to someone who prepares his strategy around his size, and he was good at doing it too. Very crucial. And George Arias made him pay. George Arias isn't as talented as half of the people that Jarrett Hurd probably beat at 154. Just a lot stronger. There's a reason for weight classes. Cliched as it sounds, but that is true. Good win for Arias. Good fight. Went the distance. What goes around comes around, they say. While he was winning them fights at 154 on attrition in the late rounds, looks like they neglected working on his technique, and that came round to burn him in the Arias fight, because Arias is not the most technical guy. Looks like he's improved, he's tightened up a little, he's a little more disciplined. So it caught up to Hurd in the end. I guess while he was world champion, his coaches didn't change much. But when you move up to 160, it's almost like you have to reinvent yourself. And it was almost like I was watching him trying to fight the same fight that he was successful at 154, but it didn't work today. We're going to have to see if he can make the adjustments in the future. Or is he going to just fade into being a gatekeeper? That's why if they're going to be these quote-unquote weight bullies, let them do so. It will all even itself out in the end. Then we've got Beck. I'm just going to call him Beck. BEKTEMIR MELILKUZIEV is his name. Now, before the fight, 12 hours ago, there it is there, I said I wanted Gabe to win. I wasn't sure if he could, but I wanted Gabe to win. This guy is from Uzbekistan. He was 7-0 with 6 knockouts. If you look at the level of opposition and you watch him fight, I'd be asking, why are some people making this guy some cult hero? What is it he's did? As somebody pointed out on Twitter, Beats, I think it was you who was pointing out how people like hyping up these Eastern Europeans when they come out of the amateurs. Yeah, there's this almost this geeky-fied obsession with these guys. And I'm not saying, you can't support them as fighters, but do you know who Gabe is? Gabe used to work out with Bernard Hopkins in Philly. He's a Philly fighter. He's been in them Philly gyms for years. What was the first fight I saw from Gabe? Let me see if I can figure it out. I believe one of the first fights I saw from Gabe was when he beat Charles Whitaker. And he's been a pro since 2006. Yeah? This guy actually gave Triple G a decent fight, moving up from 154. He got banged up and the cuts overwhelmed him, and Triple G was just too good for him. Let's keep it real. But this guy's fought people like Fernando Guerrera, who was a good fighter. Unbeaten. I think Grady Brewer from The Contender took Fernando's unbeaten record, but he was a prospect. He beat Kassim. He lost in 2 rounds to Angulo in 2009. Got wins over the likes of Soto Carras, who was a decent fighter in his day. Seichu Powell. That's a good win. Charles Whitaker, like I said, I'm sure I saw that on terrestrial television. I can't remember where or what channel. And then obviously in his next fight, the Golovkin fight, he went 7 with Golovkin. Jalen Love was a no decision. I remember Rosado winning that fight. Jalen got a decision, and that was a robbery. I'm using robbery. I don't care what nobody says. I'm using robbery. And then Jalen popped for marijuana. No decision. He gave Peter Quillen quite a tough bout, but Quillen won by injury stoppage. He got a knockdown, and it was a good fight. This was for Peter Quillen's WBO belt. Quillen was 29-0. The Charlo fight. Jamel. And I always think, yo, I can't see the difference between the two. The fight looked even to me. Then obviously he lost to David Lemieux, 32-2, big puncher. That's probably Lemieux's career best performance. But this is what happens when you fight over a period of 15 years, 40 fights. There may be stoppage losses in there. Points losses to Willie Monroe, Martin Murray in the UK, and he travels as well. You got a draw against Luis Arias, who just beat Jarrett Hurd, lost to Selecki, who we've seen lose to Andrade and Danny Jacobs. Got a controversial loss to Danny Jacobs where Danny looked half asleep. So when I'm seeing this bet guy going in with Rosado, I'm thinking, well, he might catch Rosado when he's way past his best. But I'm thinking, Rosado is a grizzled vet. He shouldn't have no fear of this guy. And I wanted him to win because I've never seen him get that big win. And I'll be honest, and I shouldn't play into the fan base, but when they make certain fighters cult figures prematurely, they normally fall apart. I mostly come into racial conflict with non-black YouTube channels over Eastern European fighters as well. But wow, I've never seen Gabe end a fight like that. That was some Ernie Shavers type of punch. But that's what happens though, you know, like Gabe never ducked no smoke. He's fought anyone who's anyone between 154 and 160 and 168. He's never ducked anybody. Beck, he was just walking in because, you know, he had success to the body. He dropped Gabe in the first round and hurt him again in the second. Walking in with no defense. I mean, Beck's technique is just ridiculously pathetic. The fight turned around in the second when Gabe kept his hands up high, elbows tucked in, and rather than trying to move away and avoid the power, he took it straight back to Beck. And he hit Beck with that left hook to the body. And I bet you any money you go through all of Beck's pro fights, he's never been hit like that before. But, you know, I've watched a few of Beck's fights. He's got no jab. He's got no interest in using the jab. He just thinks, okay, I can bounce around the ring, keep my hands low, and I'll just lunge in with power shots whenever I feel I want to. Well, that's not good enough at the top level at 168. That's just not good enough. Don't get it twisted. He hurt Gabe again. Because the punches are so wide and he's very aggressive that even if they hit you on the elbows, you're going to feel them. But Gabe is getting the range down and he's beginning to see how far Beck is throwing the punches from, considering he's a lot shorter with a shorter reach. It's a strategy for disaster. We go into the third. Them big wide shots, like very powerful. Like Gabe is blocking them, but they're hurting. But at the same time, he's so open to that right hand. Gabe sets him up before. As Gabe is backing up to the ropes, he counters with a straight right to get the range. Accurate punch, not much on it, but accurate punch. This guy's not learning. He starts another attack. This time, he's thrown the left hand fractionally too far out, considering he's got the shorter reach. And Gabe counters him with the best punch he's thrown of his career. And that's one of the biggest dangers when you're fighting a non-puncher. You try and take liberties that you may not take with people who hit harder. They tried to fast-track Beck. They attempted to put him in there with Kovalev, who popped dirty before their fight that was scheduled for last year. And they tried to use Rosado as a stepping stone. And that's why I wanted Rosado to win, because I thought this is a bit of a liberty to think that you can go in there with someone so experienced, a Philly gym fighter, who's never ducked smoke with anyone, who's been in the ring with some of the best between 154 and 168. So I wanted Gabe to win, and he pulled it off. Now, reality has to set in for Beck. I don't think he's going to quit. But he's not a 168 pounder. We can start there. Because Gabe is not top of the food chain in that weight class. He's too small for that weight class. He has a little excess on his body which he could get rid of and get down to 160. He needs a defense. He needs a jab. He needs to be less predictable with that left hook to the body. And he needs to use that southpaw stance to be a bit more cuter. But does he have a suspect chin? Is the question. I don't know. I think that punch would have decked many 168 pounders or whoever Gabe connected on, to be honest. It was a great punch. Beck would have to probably look at a more peekaboo, perhaps crouch, weave more shots sort of style if he's going to fight at 168. That style there ain't going to work. I'm telling you that now. As for Gabe, he called out Munguia, who stopped ZEREMETA, who was stopped recently by Triple G. Munguia throws a lot of shots under the tutelage of Eric Morales. It would be a very good fight. I'd love to see that one. KAMIL ZEREMETA at this level is a punch bag and would probably be better served dropping down a level and defending his European title. Jaime is only a year younger than Beck. Jaime has a decent resume though. Former WBO champion beating Saddam Ali, Liam Smith, Dennis Hogan, Gary O'Sullivan, Terreno Johnson. He has a good record. And they're bringing him along slowly. Perhaps they're trying to groom him to challenge Canelo at some stage. He does have a nice arsenal of punches and a good gas tank. And he seems to be developing his own style now, where previously it was hard to tell what this big, tall kid was doing. I'm warming to him. I'm warming to him a little. I don't think they're going to try and pitch him in with Golovkin yet because he gives up his height a little and Golovkin could do some damage when Munguia's all ear-muffed up, leaning in with that left uppercut. Golovkin could hurt him bad. I won't mind seeing the fight though. It'd be better than Golovkin's last two opponents. I'd rather Golovkin fight Jermall. We'll talk about Jermall in a minute. Most people did not want to see CHARLO defend against Montiel, but it turned out to be a good fight in the end. Maybe too good for Jermall Charlo's liking. It's hard to tell what Montiel was doing at the start of the fight, but he'll learn from this and, he'll have to strategize a whole lot better if he's going to win world titles. From the first round, you've got to be getting down to business. He used more movement. He used his legs a lot more than I thought he would. But it made him awkward but not elusive because he was getting caught with too many big shots. Even though he tried to bounce around the ring and confuse CHARLO, he couldn't get his head out of the line of CHARLO's jab and the big right hands. He looked a little nervous, in all truth, and a little out of his depth early on. CHARLO, I don't know if anyone's sold him a myth. He is one of the hugest punchers that the 160 division has seen. And he can punch, but he seems to hit people and expect them to go. And when they don't, they are able to flurry back. He wants to hit you and see the effect of what the shot did to you. And he needs to get out of that mind frame, especially if he's going to take on the likes of Andrade and Triple G. Although Triple G's past it, in my opinion. Montiel came back, threw some good shots, combinations. Knotted up Jermall's right eye, took Jermall's best punches, and was more effective when he came forward behind his jab and landed combinations. But Jermall was way ahead on the scorecard by the end of 12. Did he have trouble making the weight? Were there weight issues because he was 4 ounces over? On the official weighing, he came back and made the weight easily, but was there a little trouble there? Is he just getting too complacent, fighting a level of competition that perhaps is not bringing the best out of him? Or is Montiel better than advertised? But it's a successful defense. He was never hurt really badly or anything like that. Or the scorecard was never in doubt. He just seemed to run out of ideas when he couldn't knock Montiel out. But he did produce some very good work. Powerful jab from that wide leg stance and a whole lot of power shots. I feel Jermall would have his hands full with Jaime Munguia. I feel he would. Didn't think I'd ever be saying that, but I think he'd beat Jaime, but I wouldn't be shocked if it went the other way either. I really wouldn't. The worst thing for Jermall is if he gets beaten by one of the opponents that the PBC have handpicked for him that he shouldn't be losing to, rather than losing to an Andrade or a Golovkin in a unification, or challenging himself at 168 with one of the belt holders, Canelo, Plant, or even a non-title fight with Benavidez. That would be the saddest thing, and he shouldn't allow it to happen. I was thinking, though, there may be confidence issues there with Jermall. The reason why he's so reluctant to call somebody out and try and make a fight. Talk to Al Heyman and say, I want to fight that guy, Golovkin, Andrade. Seems very reluctant. Is it a confidence thing? I think after watching the program on Showtime where they previewed the fight, he loves his family life and he doesn't want to jeopardize that. So boxing has become a hustle for him right now. And a good hustle. And if that's what it is, maybe he should just continue doing that, because there's a difference between using boxing as a hustle and going for glory. If he has confidence issues, he should just continue what he's doing. He's going to get criticism, but that's what he should do. I could actually see him in one of them big fights tensing up and struggling, in all truth. He just spent too long not testing himself. I guarantee you Andrade is going to put hands on him early. I don't know if he'll be able to maintain it, but early he puts hands on him. And his response to taking on Andrade, that horrible fighter is what he called him. He offered Montiel to Andrade. You fight him first, then we can talk about it. So you wanted to fight the guy that was handpicked by the PBC for you to fight and you struggled against. He's got to fight him to impress you to get a fight. Why don't you go fight Liam Williams, who was actually Andrade's mandatory? Why don't you go fight him? Well, better yet, just fight Andrade and give the fans what they want. I say he may have confidence issues because he looked shook around Danny Jacobs when he was face-to-face with Danny after talking a lot of smack about Danny online, you know what I mean? But face-to-face, he crumbled a little, didn't he? He said he was going to fight David Benavidez. Then all of a sudden, no, I'm not going to fight him. I'd rather fight Andrade or something like that. You know what I mean? Even if we talk about the competitiveness between him and his brother. He says his brother wants to be on top all the time. I'll let him just be on top. I don't care. I'd rather sit back and listen. I think, damn. Do you want to do anything to make your resume stand out? I'm not saying fight Jermall, but come on, man. You see, I've tried not to attack the PBC. But when you hear Wilder saying Dylan's got to sign with the PBC, he's got to fight Luis Ortiz, Spence talking about this side of the street, Caleb Plant telling Canelo, why don't you fight Callum Smith? Why don't you fight Billy Joe Saunders and then I'll fight you? You know, not like Canelo needed any telling. He beat them same two opponents, took all their scraps. Caleb hasn't beaten no one for their belt, making demands. And Charlo wants to tell Andrade he needs to fight Montiel. Why? Because you didn't look impressive against him? There's just not enough of you talking against this nonsense. There's just not enough of you. And boxing is never going to recover across the pond unless there's more of us talking out. I don't put a lot of stock into pound for pound lists, but I don't know if Inoue is top 2, top 3. He's somewhere thereabouts, I would imagine. Quality performance. He gave us a boxing exhibition, moving, hitting, and hitting with a lot of power. But since he won that WBSS final nearly 2 years ago, who's he fought? I know there's been a pandemic, I know. Who's he fighting next? Good left hooks to the body, finished off his opponent. DASMARINAS, I don't know how good he was. 30 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw going into the fight. Very one-sided, but regardless of the challenger's caliber, Inoue looked very good. He looked very good. I heard Leonard Ellerby saying that Stephen Fulton, WBO 122-pound champion, would destroy Inoue. I'm not sure about that. I don't know how much weight classes Inoue wants to conquer. Donaire's going to face Casemiro, although that's a PBC fight. Will the winner take on Inoue? Donaire's fought him already. I know Inoue and Casemiro was supposed to fight, but I believe the coronavirus got in the way. I was really looking forward to that. What about Rigondeaux? He's got a lower tier belt to Inoue's WBA belt. Could that fight happen? Man, Rigondeaux's ancient now.
Yo, Papi, I think it's time to get the DNA test done. so we could prove Saul Canelo Alvarez is the true son of Julio Cesar Chavez Sr.
Because after Chavez had his exhibition, he spoke to Canelo, who worked his corner, like he was his son. I shouldn't say it really. It's a horrible thing to say about Chavez Jr. But he didn't have a chance, really. I mean, his dad was 59. And yes, it was an exhibition. But Camacho Jr. wasn't a bad fighter as a pro. He wasn't bad. And he was a lot heavier than Chavez. And it was a good exhibition. But Chavez's combination punching, that lead right he used to throw in his prime, it's all there still. Balance, that get clattered with a big shot and it's like, did I get hit? I did? Ah, so what? Even his conditioning at 59, nearly 60. He's one of my favourite fighters of all time. There's no doubt about that. No doubt. He was right there when I started watching it as a hardcore fan. He didn't drop the tempo for 1 second of that fight. 60-year-old. Yeah, I know Camacho Jr. was out of shape or whatever. He was a bit tubby and stuff, but he was a lot heavier. But just to watch Chavez again, man. That's one of my highlights of the weekend so far. Definitely. That and Gabe. Props to Camacho. Boxes like his dad. And he put on an exhibition too. Props to him too. Landed some good rights. Both men had the headgear on, 4-rounder. Of course, Chavez and Hector's old man Senior, they had that battle in the 90s and Hector took a pounding. But, you know, as per usual, he went the distance. I don't think he got dropped either. It was hard to drop Camacho. Durable, skillful as anything. I remember he knotted up Camacho's eye. You rarely saw Camacho get knotted up like that because he was defensively so sound. I actually watched Anderson Silva versus Chavez Jr. I found it a little entertaining. I heard Jake Paul decline the fight with Anderson Silva, and you know, he can't beat Anderson Silva. He can't beat him. He can't beat Anderson. He wouldn't lay a glove on him. You know, Anderson Silva is just a talented individual. If Anderson Silva started boxing in his teenage years, I could see him at least challenging for a world title, perhaps winning one of the belts out there. I don't think he'd be a C-level fighter or anything like that. Not saying he'd be the GOAT or anything like that, but I could see him challenging for titles and perhaps picking one up if he made boxing his main sport. He just has the mindset and the athleticism. He's one of them talented dudes. He's one of them dudes who look at the speedball, figure out a couple of angles and I know someone like that who just walked in the gym. They hadn't been in the gym before. You know, just had natural coordination and speed and timing. And Anderson Silva's one of them dudes, I think. Just bear in mind, Chavez wasn't in top shape. Anderson, 6'2", 78-inch reach apparently. 4 inches longer than Chavez. Good head movement, great legs. I mean, the man's in his 40s. He weighed in at 182. Chavez was 184. Chavez, not very productive. Got to the body a few times, couple of headshots, but nothing of any note in the early rounds. Silva done a little foot lift thing, then threw the right lead. He landed a great uppercut just before that. Not exactly orthodox boxing, but I found it entertaining. I found it interesting. I did. Anderson even done a Jersey Joe Walcott pivot in there. It looked beautiful as well. You know, Silva was even beating Chavez inside. I mean, the punches weren't clean or crisp from Silva inside, but he's still beating him. And I see him getting the forearm in Chavez's face on the blind side of the referee. So, as the commentary team pointed out, he is the naturally bigger guy. Chavez has got no business fighting at 184 for a start. He's the naturally bigger guy, Silva. And they said he fought bigger guys in the UFC than Chavez with smaller gloves. So he was enjoying himself in there. Anderson was teeing off in Chavez, and Chavez complained to the referee. What are you complaining about? He's punching you. But anyway, Chavez, he don't care no more. I mean, like, from a long time ago, he stopped caring. It is what it is. You could argue that he didn't even win a round, really. I tell you what, Deontay Wilder needs a massive performance. Because Michael Hunter was talking about he'd knocked Deontay out early. And Anthony Joshua, in his interview, he was saying you better watch what comes out of your mouth. I don't think he's elite. Joshua was responding to Wilder saying he would knock out Joshua in spectacular fashion. And that he wants the Joshua fight after, no excuses. They're making excuses already. They're lining up mandatories. You see Wilder and Fury, they don't understand what it's like to be a modern day unified champion. You don't line up the mandatories. The sanctioning bodies line up the mandatories. So he has obligations if he wants to maintain the belts. And you know something? I've really wanted to not make videos where I'm knocking Deontay Wilder. I really have done. But how many offers did Eddie Hearn make to this guy to fight Anthony Joshua? What happened to the DAZN offer, which he said he would have got more for fighting Joshua than fighting Fury? Let's not forget, Fury fucked him off for the whole of 2018. And he just waited for Tyson Fury, rather than taking the AJ fight. Only in Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder's world would they make it look like it's easier to maintain 3 belts than the 1 belt they've been fighting for since 2018. Joshua's fighting his mandatories. Joshua was, very straight talking in the interview. He said there's a lot of us who want to get at Wilder. He said he's not elite. He's got one weapon to go to war with. I think a lot of people want to get at Tyson Fury as well. He's never responded to Dillion's allegation that he knocked him down several times in a sparring session. He's never responded to it. Vladimir and Vitaly were brothers. So we weren't expecting they were going to unify and fight for undisputed because they're brothers. So we've just been waiting for an undisputed fight so long. And then I've got clowns who want to say, oh, it's just because you're a Joshua fan. No, I want to see the top heavyweights tie the belts up. Or at least I want to see the top heavyweights fight for supremacy, even if the belts ain't involved. But the Wilder and Fury fanatics and the AJ and Eddie Hearn haters have done boxing a big disservice. No one's asking you to be an Anthony Joshua fan. Nobody. If you're not calling it down the line, I don't want to ever hear you say, oh, this is the problem with boxing and we need to fix this and that. If you're not calling this, you have no grounds to say anything. You're either part of the problem or part of the solution. No one's asking you to be an Eddie Hearn fan or an AJ fan. But if you cannot call it down the line that they've done everything right to try and get undisputed in the last couple of years, and it's the other two parties, the so-called rivals of Anthony Joshua, who swerved, dodged, I don't care how you want to frame it, but they've denied us undisputed. If you can't call that down the line, you shouldn't really be saying anything about the state of boxing. You really shouldn't.